Have you ever had someone look you straight in the eyes and make you feel like you were nothing? Not because you failed, not because you made a mistake, but because they wanted you to believe you would never become anything. That day changed my life forever. If he had never said those words, I might have spent the rest of my life trying to make him proud. Instead, I made the whole world notice my name. My name is Emma. 3 years ago, I believed love could survive anything. I believed loyalty mattered. I believed that if you stood beside someone during their hardest days, they would never forget it. I was wrong. I met Ryan during my 2nd year of college. He wasn't rich. He wasn't popular. He was simply funny, confident, and full of dreams. He wanted to build a technology company one day. Every evening, we sat together in a small coffee shop near campus. He talked about changing the world. I listened with a smile. Whenever he doubted himself, I reminded him why he started. When he couldn't pay for books, I shared mine. When he wanted to quit college because life felt too hard, I stayed awake all night helping him finish his assignments. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was simply in love. After graduation, life became difficult. Ryan couldn't find a good job. Bills started piling up. He became frustrated. Some days he would spend hours sending resumes without receiving a single reply. Every rejection hurt him. Every failure made him angrier. I picked up extra shifts at a small publishing company. The pay wasn't great, but it covered rent and groceries. Whenever Ryan apologized for not earning enough, I smiled and told him, "We're a team." I truly believed those words. Months turned into years. Slowly, Ryan's luck began to change. A startup hired him. Within a year, he was promoted. His salary doubled, then doubled again. For the first time, we could breathe without worrying about every bill. I thought this was the beginning of our happy ending. I couldn't have been more wrong. Success changed Ryan. At first, it was small things. He started buying expensive clothes. He talked differently. He stopped thanking people. Then he began correcting the way I spoke. "You should dress better. You should learn how successful people act. You embarrass me sometimes." I laughed it off. Everyone changes a little. That's what I told myself. But little changes became bigger ones. He stopped inviting me to company events. When I asked why, he said, "You wouldn't fit in." Those 4 words stayed with me. You wouldn't fit in. Still. I kept making excuses for him. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe work was changing him. Maybe things would get better. Instead, they became worse. One Friday evening, Ryan told me his company was hosting a celebration at one of the nicest hotels in the city. "I guess I can bring one guest." I smiled. "I'd love to go." He looked at me for a long second, then sighed. "Fine, but don't make me regret it." Something inside me hurt, but I ignored it. I spent hours choosing a simple navy blue dress. Nothing expensive, just elegant. I curled my hair, applied light makeup. When I looked into the mirror, I finally smiled. Maybe tonight would remind us of who we used to be. Maybe we'd laugh together again. Maybe we'd dance. Maybe we'd find each other again. I had no idea that night would become the worst memory of my life. The hotel ballroom looked beautiful. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling. Soft music filled the room. People laughed while holding sparkling glasses. Everyone looked confident. Ryan barely introduced me. He walked ahead while I struggled to keep up. Every few minutes he disappeared into another conversation. I stood alone near a table, pretending to check my phone. Then I heard someone ask him, "So, is Emma your wife?" Ryan laughed, not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward laugh, a real laugh. He looked toward me for only a second before answering, "No, she's just someone who's been around for a long time." The group laughed politely. My heart sank. Someone else asked, "So what does she do?" Ryan shrugged. "Nothing impressive." I felt my face grow warm. I wanted to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. Then came the words that changed everything. One of his coworkers smiled at me and said, "You must be proud of Ryan." Before I could answer, Ryan spoke first. Honestly, without me, she'd probably still be nobody." Everyone became quiet. Then he added with a smirk, "She's sweet, but she's never going to do anything important. Some people are simply average." Average, worthless, forgettable. Every sentence felt heavier than the one before. He wasn't angry. He wasn't joking. He truly believed it, and he wanted everyone else to believe it too. For a moment, the room became silent. No one defended me. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked away. I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. I looked at Ryan, hoping he would realize what he'd done. Instead, he simply took another sip of his drink. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not my heart, my hope. Without saying a single word, I picked up my bag and walked toward the exit. Ryan didn't follow me. He didn't call my name. He didn't even notice I was gone. Outside, cold air hit my face. The city lights blurred through my tears. I sat alone on a bench across the street. For nearly an hour, I cried harder than I ever had before, not because I had lost the man I loved, but because I had spent years believing someone who no longer respected me. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Ryan. "Where are you?" No apology, no concern, just 3 words. I stared at the screen for the first time in years. I didn't answer. Instead, I looked up at the giant digital billboard across the street. A smiling woman stood there beside the cover of her newly released book. People stopped to take pictures. Some pointed at her name with admiration. I whispered to myself, what if, one day, people stopped because of my name? The idea sounded impossible, but for the first time in a long time, it also sounded beautiful. I stood up, wiped away my tears, and made one promise to myself. One day, the same man who called me worthless will hear strangers speak my name with respect. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But that promise became the beginning of everything, and I had no idea that the very next morning I would discover a secret that would change the direction of my entire life. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a heavy heart. For a few seconds, I hoped the previous night had only been a nightmare. Then I saw my phone, 12 missed calls, 9 messages, all from Ryan. Not one of them said, "I'm sorry." The first message read, "Where did you go?" The second, "You embarrassed me by leaving." The third, "Everyone kept asking where you were." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I finally understood something. He wasn't upset that he had hurt me. He was upset that I had walked away. I placed the phone face down and made myself a cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I sat in complete silence. No excuses, no defending him in my mind. No pretending everything was fine, just silence. And in that silence, I admitted the truth. The man I loved no longer existed. That afternoon, I went to work. I had been working at a small publishing company for almost 4 years. Most people never noticed us. We edited books, designed covers, and helped new writers publish their stories. It wasn't a glamorous job, but I loved it. Books had always been my escape. My manager, Mrs. Carter, looked at me the moment I walked in. "Emma, are you okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine." She didn't believe me. "You don't have to tell me what happened," she said softly. "But whatever it is, don't let it convince you that you're less than you are." Her words caught me off guard. How did she know? Maybe pain was easier to see than I thought. Around lunchtime, an elderly man walked into our office carrying a worn leather folder. His name was Mr. Harris. He had visited our office many times over the years. He dreamed of publishing a memoir about his late wife. Most companies had rejected him. They said the story wasn't commercial enough. But every time he came in, I treated him with respect. I listened. I encouraged him. Sometimes I even stayed after work to help him organize his chapters. He smiled when he saw me. "I brought something for you." "For me?" He handed me a small notebook. Its cover was faded and the corners were worn. "I've watched you for years," he said. "You're always opposing everyone else." I smiled awkwardly. "It's nothing." He shook his head. "No, Emma, kindness is never nothing." I opened the notebook. Every page was filled with writing prompts, story ideas, and little notes about finding your own voice. On the first page, one sentence was underlined. The people who survive the hardest chapters often write the best stories. I read it again, then again. Something inside me stirred. That evening, instead of going home immediately, I stayed at the office. Everyone else had left. The building was quiet. I opened a blank document on my computer. The blinking cursor stared back at me. I had no idea what to write. Then I remembered Ryan's words. "You're never going to do anything important." Without thinking, I typed my first sentence. The day someone called me worthless was the day I stopped asking for permission to dream. I froze. Those words didn't feel forced. They felt real. I kept writing. 1 page became 3. 3 became 10. Hours passed without me noticing. For the first time in months, I forgot to check my phone. I forgot about Ryan. I forgot about the pain. I simply wrote. When I finally got home, Ryan was waiting. He was sitting on the couch, arms crossed. "Where have you been?" "Working. You ignored my calls." "Yes." He looked surprised. Normally, I apologized first. This time, I didn't. He sighed dramatically. "You made me look bad last night." I stared at him. "Really? What? You think leaving quietly was worse than what you said?" Ryan rolled his eyes. "Oh, Emma, you're still thinking about that? Still thinking about that? As if humiliation could disappear overnight." "You were being too sensitive," he continued. "It was just a joke." I took a slow breath. No, it wasn't. He stood up. "No," I said calmly. "I've just been quiet for too long." For the first time since we met, Ryan had no answer. The next few days felt different. Not because my life had changed overnight, because I had every morning. I woke up an hour earlier. I wrote before work, during lunch. I wrote. After dinner, I wrote again. Words poured out of me. Stories, thoughts, memories, dreams I had buried years ago. Writing became more than a hobby. It became the place where I remembered who I was. One afternoon, Mrs. Carter stopped by my desk. "I need someone to help edit a speech for a young entrepreneur," she said. Everyone else was busy. "I'll do it." She smiled. "I knew you'd volunteer." The speech belonged to a woman named Sophia Blake. She had started a small online business from her apartment. Within 5 years, it had become a national brand. As I edited her speech, one sentence caught my attention. "Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that they were never right." I sat there for several minutes, reading those words over and over. They felt like they had been written just for me. That weekend, I made a decision. I rented a tiny desk in a shared workspace across town. It wasn't expensive, just a quiet place where I could think. On the wall, I taped one piece of paper. It read, 1 year. Underneath it, I wrote 3 goals. Finish my first manuscript, sump it to publishers. Never let anyone decide my worth again. Every time I walked in, I saw those words. They reminded me why I had started. Ryan noticed the changes. "You've been acting strange." "I'm busy." "Busy doing what?" "Writing." He laughed, actually laughed. "You? A writer?" "Emma, be serious. It won't go anywhere." A month earlier, those words would have crushed me. Now, they became fuel. I simply smiled. "We'll see." He shook his head. "You really think people will care what you have to say?" I picked up my notebook. "I guess we'll find out." Then I walked into the other room, leaving him standing there, confused. Weeks turned into months. Every rejection email hurt. Some publishers never replied. Others said my story wasn't the right fit. A few suggested I give up. Each rejection reminded me of Ryan's voice, but instead of quitting, I improved. I rewrote chapters. I learned. I grew. One evening, as rain tapped against my window, I clicked send on one final submission. Then I closed my laptop. "There," I whispered. "No matter what happens, I didn't quit." For the first time in years, I felt proud of myself. I had no idea that within a few days, one unexpected phone call would begin the journey that would eventually put my name on every headline Ryan would never be able to ignore. 3 days later, I almost missed the call. I was carrying 2 cups of coffee back to my desk when my phone started ringing. The number wasn't saved. Normally, I ignored unknown calls. For some reason, I answered, "Hello?" A warm voice replied, "Hi, is this Emma Collins?" "Yes, my name is Olivia Grant. I'm an editor at Harper & Stone Publishing." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Harper & Stone wasn't just another publisher. It was one of the companies I had dreamed about since college. I gripped the phone tighter. "We've finished reading your manuscript," Olivia continued. "We'd like to meet you." I stood completely still, not because she had offered me a contract. She hadn't. She had only asked for a meeting. But after months of rejection, someone finally wanted to hear my story. The meeting was scheduled for Friday. That gave me 4 days to panic. I rewrote my notes 3 times, bought a simple cream-colored blazer from a discount store, practiced introducing myself in front of the mirror, then laughed at myself. Why was I pretending to be someone else? If they liked my writing, they already liked the real me. Ryan noticed the blazer hanging on the bedroom door. "What's the occasion?" "I have a meeting." "What kind of meeting?" "With a publisher." He looked surprised. "A real publisher?" He smirked. "They probably just want to reject you in person." He laughed at his own joke. I didn't. Instead, I calmly replied, "Maybe, but I'm still going." His smile faded. He wasn't used to me refusing to react. Friday arrived faster than I expected. The publisher's office overlooked the city skyline, glass walls, wooden floors, shelves filled with best-selling books. The receptionist smiled. "Emma?" "Yes, they're waiting for you." My hands felt cold. I reminded myself to breathe. Inside the conference room sat 3 people: Olivia, a marketing director named Ben, and the company's founder, Margaret Stone. She looked at me kindly. "Emma," she said, "thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." Olivia picked up my manuscript. "I've worked in publishing for almost 20 years. I've read thousands of stories. But yours," she paused, "felt honest." I swallowed. She continued, "You didn't write to impress people. You wrote to tell the truth." No one had ever described my work that way. Ben leaned forward. "We think readers will connect with your voice." But there it was, the word every writer fears. "But we'd like you to rewrite the ending." My heart sank. Margaret smiled. "Not because it's bad, because we think your story deserves an even stronger finish." Relief washed over me. They weren't rejecting me. They believed it could become better. And for the first time in years, someone believed in me. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked harder than I ever had before. Every evening after work, I rewrote chapters. Every weekend, I met with Olivia. She challenged me. "Go deeper. Tell readers what you really felt. Don't hide behind perfect words." At first, it scared me, then I understood. People don't fall in love with perfect stories. They fall in love with honest ones. Meanwhile, things at home continued to change. Ryan barely noticed me anymore. His career was growing, so was his ego. He spent more nights at company dinners, more weekends traveling. Sometimes he didn't come home until after midnight. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, he answered the same way: "I'm busy." One evening, while folding laundry, his phone lit up on the table. A message appeared: "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." I froze. The sender's name wasn't saved, just a heart emoji. I stared at the screen, not touching it, not unlocking it, just staring. A minute later, Ryan walked into the room. He grabbed his phone immediately. Our eyes met for the first time. He looked nervous. "Who's texting you?" He shrugged. "A coworker, with a heart." He smiled awkwardly. "You know how people joke around." I wanted to believe him. Part of me still did, but another part, the stronger part, already knew. The following week, my manuscript was finished. Olivia called me. "We love it." I closed my eyes. "We'd like to offer you a publishing contract." Tears filled my eyes before she even finished speaking. It wasn't because I was becoming an author. It was because someone had finally seen value in something I created. Not because of Ryan. Not because of luck. Because of me. That evening, I walked into the apartment carrying a small bakery box. Inside was my favorite chocolate cake. I wanted to celebrate. Ryan looked up from his laptop. "What's that?" "I signed a publishing contract." He blinked, then smiled, not proudly, politely. Oh, no hug, no congratulations, no excitement, nothing. Finally, he asked, "So, how much does that pay?" I laughed softly. "I don't know yet." "Then don't celebrate too early." His attention returned to his laptop. The conversation was over. I looked at the cake, then quietly placed it in the refrigerator. Later that night, I ate one small slice by myself, and somehow, it tasted sweeter than any celebration I'd ever imagined, because this success belonged to me. A month later, everything became impossible to ignore. The publisher announced my upcoming book online. They shared my photo, a short interview, and the release date. Within hours. Thousands of people had shared the post. Comments poured in. "I can't wait to read this. Her story sounds inspiring. This feels so real." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Then it rang. It was Ryan. "Emma," his voice sounded different. "My coworkers just sent me your interview. They're saying you're writing a book?" "Yes, you never told me." I looked out the window. For months, he had never asked about my writing. Not once. I tried. You never listened. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then he quietly said, "I didn't think it would actually happen." Those words hurt less than they once would have. Because I finally understood something. People who underestimate you often do so, because they never expect you to grow without them. 2 weeks later, the first printed copy of my book arrived. I held it in my hands for several minutes, running my fingers across my name, Emma Collins, my name, on a real book. No one could take that away from me. Not the rejection letters, not the sleepless nights, and certainly not the man who once called me worthless, but I had no idea. The biggest betrayal of all was still waiting for me, because just days before my book launch, I was about to discover that Ryan hadn't only stopped believing in me, he had been living a completely different life behind my back. Sometimes life gives you signs, tiny ones, easy to ignore, a strange phone call, a late-night message, an excuse that doesn't quite make sense. For months, I had seen those signs. I just kept telling myself they meant nothing. Now, I was about to find out they meant everything. My book launch was only 2 weeks away. The publisher had planned interviews, podcasts, and a live event at a bookstore downtown. My calendar had never been this full. Every morning started with emails. Every afternoon was spent preparing for interviews. Every evening, I answered messages from readers who had somehow connected with the announcement of my book. Some wrote that they were leaving toxic relationships. Some thanked me for sharing my story. Others simply said, "Your words gave me hope." I hadn't even released the book yet, and somehow it was already changing lives. That feeling was impossible to describe. Ryan noticed the change too, not because he cared, because other people cared. His coworkers kept mentioning my interviews. His boss even congratulated him during a meeting. "Your girlfriend's book looks impressive." Ryan smiled, but when he came home that evening, his mood was different. "So, you're getting famous now?" I laughed. "I'm not famous. People know your name. It's just a book." He stared at me for a moment, then said something strange. "Don't let it go to your head." I almost smiled. The man who once told me I'd never become anything was now warning me not to become too successful. A few days later, I left work early because one of my interviews had been canceled. I didn't tell Ryan. I thought I'd surprise him with dinner. I picked up his favorite pasta from a small Italian restaurant near our apartment. As I walked toward our building, I noticed his car wasn't in the parking lot. That wasn't unusual. He often worked late. I took the elevator upstairs. When I reached our floor, I heard laughter. It sounded familiar. The apartment next door belonged to an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins. She smiled when she saw me. "Oh, Emma. Hi. I thought you were away." I frowned. "Away?" She nodded. "I've seen your husband leaving with that young woman almost every afternoon this week. My heart skipped. You mean a coworker? I don't know. She has long blonde hair. They seem very close. Mrs. Jenkins smiled innocently. I assumed she was family. I forced a smile. Maybe. Then I walked inside my apartment, closed the door, and stood there without moving. My hands were shaking, not because of jealousy, because deep inside I already knew. Ryan came home nearly 3 hours later, carrying takeout. You're home early. So are you. He looked confused. I was working. Were you? Yes. I looked directly into his eyes. Who is she? His face changed instantly. What? The woman you've been spending every afternoon with. He laughed. There isn't anyone. Mrs. Jenkins has seen you. His smile disappeared. Oh, so you're spying on me now? No, the truth just walked to my front door. Ryan threw his keys onto the table. This is ridiculous. She's a client you have dinner with. It's business. A client who texts you hearts. His jaw tightened. You went through my phone? I didn't have to. Silence filled the room. Finally, he sighed. Fine, there is someone. Every part of me froze. But it's not what you think. Isn't that what everyone says? He rubbed his forehead. Her name is Vanessa. We've been working together. We became friends. That's all. I looked at him quietly. If that's all, why did you lie? He had no answer. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply packed a small suitcase. Ryan watched from the bedroom door. What are you doing? I'm leaving for a while. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. You'll come back. He sounded confident, like he already knew the ending. I zipped my suitcase. No. This time, I'm choosing myself. Then I walked out. He didn't stop me. Maybe he believed I would return. Maybe he thought I had nowhere else to go. He couldn't have been more wrong. The publisher arranged a small apartment near their office while I finished my promotional events. It wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful. The first night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. No arguments. No walking on eggshells. No feeling like I had to earn someone's respect. Just peace. I hadn't realized how exhausting my old life had become. A week later, my book was officially released. I woke up before sunrise, too nervous to sleep. By 8 o'clock, readers were already posting photos online. By noon, several bookstores had sold out. By evening, the publisher called. Emma, you should sit down. I laughed nervously. What happened? Your book just entered the national bestseller list. I covered my mouth. No, yes, and one more thing. A television producer wants to interview you next week. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. The girl who had once believed she was ordinary was now hearing strangers celebrate her work. The interview aired nationwide. I talked about writing, about resilience, about finding your voice after heartbreak. I never mentioned Ryan by name. I didn't need to. The truth didn't require revenge. It only required honesty. The next morning, my face appeared on news websites, entertainment blogs, online magazines, and finally, on the giant digital billboard in the center of the city, the same place where, months earlier, I had whispered to myself, what if one day people stopped because of my name? Now they were. People stood there taking pictures, posting videos, sharing my story, exactly as I had once imagined. That afternoon, my phone rang. Ryan. For a long moment, I stared at the screen, then I answered. His voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. Emma, I saw the billboard. I stayed silent. I didn't know you'd actually make it. There it was again. Those words. He never believed I could succeed. Not once. I've been thinking. I made mistakes. I want to talk. I looked out the cafe window. People were walking by carrying copies of my book, smiling, laughing, living, and suddenly, the conversation no longer mattered. I have an interview in 20 minutes, maybe another time. Before he could answer, I ended the call. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for his approval. I wasn't hoping for an apology, because my life had finally become bigger than the person who tried to make me feel small. But what I didn't know was that Ryan wasn't ready to let me go. and the decision he made next would force us into one final confrontation neither of us would ever forget.